how do you think so many of the Khmer Rouge leadership effectively came to survive and actually become members, even in some cases today, of today's Cambodian government? How did they get past that? And how did the people accept the fact that they would be back, effectively back in power today?
Well, there are two factors here, David. First of all, there were a group of Khmer, usually in the eastern part of the country, who by 1978 had defected to the Vietnamese. What is happening in Cambodia at this time is a split within the Communist Party. You had the more moderates, if you will, in a place there was no moderation at all, but you had a split pro-Vietnamese, very much anti-Vietnamese, pro-Pol Pot. And those that sided with the Vietnamese then were taken in by the Vietnamese and retrained. People like the present prime minister of Cambodia, Hun Sen, whereas he was a soldier in the Khmer Rouge. He was taken in by the Vietnamese, flown up to Hanoi, given indoctrination by the Communist Party in Vietnam, and put back, placed in as, if you will, the Vietnamese puppet in Phnom Penh in 79. Hang Sam-ren, another man who's still in the Khmer government today, was a similar case. He was actually a commander, one of those commanding forces going into Phnom Penh in 75. And he was, again, taken, trained by the Vietnamese, sent back in.
But do you think they have any remorse at all for their horrific actions that they and their colleagues would take?
They certainly have covered it up. I mean, Hun Sen has been interviewed on the subject, and he usually says things like, he recognized the evil of Pol Pot, and that is why he joined the Vietnamese to overthrow this cruel and inhumane regime. Interestingly, I met Hun Sen for the first time in 1979. He was the 26-year-old foreign minister of Vietnamese occupied Cambodia. I thought, which tells you a lot about my ability to judge people, I thought that he was certainly a puppet of Vietnam, a little scrawny guy. He had lost one eye in the war. He had a rather misfitting artificial eye. And I thought, this guy's going nowhere. Well, he became the prime minister of Cambodia. He's now the longest reigning strongman in Asia, still ruling after well over 35 years. So it's extraordinary that he has had this ability to stay in there. So now there's another aspect to this, of course, and that is the people of Cambodia went back to living, in many cases, with the Khmer Rouge who had been their prisoners. And when I visited Cambodia after the war, there were extraordinary cases of people who had been victimized. They survived, obviously, but they've been victimized, living right next door to people who had been their prisoner, their prison guards.
They're tormentors, basically.
They're tormentors, exactly. So you have this dynamic. The other part about the Cambodian legacy story is I don't know of any place in the world where it took so long to put together war crimes trials. They started.
That would be my next question. Do you think the world should have held them more to account? And that would be my last question, and then we can go on to everybody else. So
okay. Well, on that point, from 1997, they began preparations for a war crime trial. Finally, they put it together. Something called the Extraordinary Chambers Court of Cambodia was put together, and they began in 2009, 2010.
But this is a Cambodian trial.
To try people. This is a Cambodian United Nations Tribunal, UN/Cambodia Tribunal. And they finally put on trial. They ended up putting on trial only 9 senior leaders. 6 of them were truly senior leaders. The first person to be convicted was the man who was in charge of the largest concentration prison camp, the Tul Sling prison in Phnom Penh. He was sentenced to life. All of them now have died, except for one guy, Khieu Samphan, who was ranking number 3 in the Communist Party leadership, is still alive at 89 years of age and still in prison. But that was an extraordinary and very limited, I should say, um, prosecution of those guilty of genocide in Cambodia. Now, to your question, should we have held them more accountable? The issue was everybody and nobody was accountable. Nobody seemed to have the appetite. You had the Chinese who were culpable. You had the Americans who were culpable. You had the Vietnamese. You had nobody who really had clean hands on this.
Well, you
So
had the International Criminal Court, but which is in theory, but anyway.
yes, but you need to put together that. You
Yes,
need to have the backing of big powers.
right.
And who is going to back it? Well, it did happen, but it took a very, very long time. But my own personal opinion is that you have so many people, so many nations that were involved in the Cambodian story that were sharing guilt,
Yeah.
that there was very, very little room for a clear cut resolution of what was a pretty horrible
Very true.
period of genocide.